Today's webinar is hosted by Nathan Turner, a senior account executive with Banktel, and a very special guest with us today, Jeff Weldon, a chief financial officer at 21st Century Bank. Jeff has been an AvidPay and Ascend customer since April of 2020. So Nathan and Jeff, thanks for joining us today. And Nathan, I'll hand things off to you.
Great. Thank you, Jacob. And again, just want to thank Jeff for being with us today. Thank him for his time and his insights. I want to thank you all as attendees for being here with us. And so just want to dive right in and just jump into the content and the information that we have for you today. Before we get into the specifics of our topic of payment automation today, and really picking Jeff's brain about some best practices and his experience, just want to give you if you haven't been a part of the other lunch and learns or don't have any familiarity at all with Banktel and who we are, we now work with about 1,700 financial institutions all over the country, and so all of our clients, everything that we do is centered around the unique needs and the unique processes and compliance and everything that goes into the realm of the world of financial institutions. We offer an enterprise-wide accounting suite that includes things like accounts payable, prepaid and accrual, fixed assets, invoice workflow. So a suite of products that really functions together and creates synergies between all of those different disciplines. One of the things that I think we're known for is a truly paperless invoice to pay workflow, in which we completely eliminate the need to handle paper in the invoice ingestion through payment process. We offer integration to just about every core banking solution that's in the market today, and Banktel has been in business now for about 30 years. So recently in 2019, we were acquired by AvidXchange. And that new partnership with AvidXchange has really opened the door for what you're going to hear about today, which is the payment automation that we can offer integrated into our Ascend accounting suite. So just to set the table a little bit about who we are, what we do in reference to how we serve financial institutions. So I want to kind of, before we dive into deep into content, I want to give Jeff just a quick opportunity here to add any commentary to that, maybe about experience so far, or just anything, Jeff, anything that you'd like to speak to related to Banktel before we dive into the specifics. And Jeff's going to share some really in-depth information with you about, their processes and maybe how this has changed what they do and what they're experiencing, and really kind of pull back the covers and give you a look inside of what it's like day to day utilizing our solution, some of their challenges, etc. So Jeff, if you want to add any flavor to that, please feel free. If not, we can dive right into the content.
Well, I would. Thank you, Nathan. Over my career, I've overseen operations and finance, and I've implemented a number of technologies. But my family and I actually relocated to the Twin Cities, so my scope is a little bit more narrowly focused into the finance department. But I had a paperless solution before, and I would say even with that paperless solution and a lot of the other operational solutions I had with the core providers we've had, this is probably one of the biggest efficiencies I've ever seen in a technology. And I'm glad to be here to talk about that today.
That's great. I really appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you for sharing that. So in speaking to the concept of a paperless invoice to pay, what does that really involve, and how do we accomplish that? Because I think one of the first things that all of us think about in reference to the traditional approach to accounts payable is an invoice that comes in by way of mail, which produces a piece of paper. And then on the back end of that, a paper check. Now, some of you may have experience with processing payments through ACH and things like that. But as we interact with prospective clients, existing clients, we find that the paper check is still prevalent, even with all of the technology, that's available to us in the marketplace today for, different AP solutions or just any kind of payment that we're making. So we have created, and it's interesting to understand and to see how COVID has really driven this sort of maturation and transition. We've created a product within the Ascend Suite called Invoice Inbox. And what that allows you to do is for those invoices that come in via email, it creates automation to pull any attachment from that email that comes in from your vendor and queue it up in our platform. So what we found is a lot of people were taking those invoices that came in via email, printing them out, or saving them and then having to go attach them. And so what the Invoice Inbox product does with some really nice technology is queue any image that comes into your AP email address, your corporate AP email, queues it up in our platform so the image is already there, and your AP team can then review the information and code what's left of what our system doesn't capture from the invoice. So as kind of a sidebar to that, and in taking that technology a step further, we are now looking most likely in Q2 at the latest Q3 at also OCR technology that goes along with that. So just taking that automation a step further. So from there, it moves into a workflow process that is customizable. You can create triggers in that workflow based on anything from amount to the vendor to components of the general ledger that invoice may affect. And then from there, that's in kind of moving into our focus today. To complete that paperless invoice to pay process, we offer AvidPay. And there are a lot of, certainly a lot of payment tools that have emerged in recent years, and there are a lot of different ways to kind of handle payments. But AvidPay is unique in several ways that we're going to explain today. And one of the great things about it in our Ascend accounting platform is that it's directly integrated. So there are a lot of payment tools out there that will ask you maybe to feed a data file into it, and that's somewhat of a manual process. And we've eliminated anything like that with API technology that allows literally just for a single click to process any type of payment, including a paper check, in which you don't have to physically handle. So just a little bit there about the invoice to pay process. So speaking directly to AvidPay, and that being that final step, what AvidPay creates is a situation where, regardless of how your vendor prefers to be paid, we can deliver that payment to them without any manual handling or even follow-up from your team. So the AvidPay service includes the delivery of the initial payment, whether that goes out as a paper check or a virtual credit card. Within AvidPay, there is a payment type called AvidPay Direct, which is essentially an ACH payment. So regardless of how your vendor prefers to be paid in our network, we're going to be able to deliver a payment that suits their needs. And again, doing that in a paperless way, even for paper checks that need to be delivered. So many of your vendors are always going to want a paper check, and we understand that and offer that as a service through AvidPay. And one of the things I think to draw maybe a parallel to something that those of you as employees at a financial institution, if you're looking for maybe a reference of, well, how does this actually work? Think about the way that your customers may log into your bill pay product, the bank's bill pay product, and enter their bill to be paid. AvidPay, the concept is similar. Now, there's much more to it on the back end than just that simple process. But if you're looking for something maybe to reference, think about it in that way, in just a payment service that allows that payment to go out without the physical handling of the payment itself. One of the unique things as well that really benefits a lot of our clients for virtual cards that are processed through AvidPay. So for your vendors who will accept a virtual payment, we actually offer monthly rebate incentives to go along with that. So that's one of the added perks of the program. In addition to the cost and the time savings that it offers, we're also going to deliver rebates to you on a monthly basis. So I want to kind of switch over real quickly and give you just a visual of how we actually process payments in AvidPay. So we talk about, efficiency and, seamlessness and technology, but, I think it's important just to understand, how does this compare to maybe some existing AP processes that we have in place today? How do we gain efficiency from this? So on our platform, I'm not going to take you through the whole process, but basically you'll ingest your invoices, whether they come in via a mail or it may be something that's come in through Invoice Inbox, as we talked about in that paperless invoice to pay workflow. So if they come in through Invoice Inbox, again, we don't have to physically handle them. We just ingest them here through Create Invoice. They go through our automated workflow process. And once they're approved by all of the necessary approvers, when we get to the point that we're processing payments, by processing those through AvidPay, we have the opportunity here to just select those that we want to process at that time, whether it's 1 or 100 of them. We automate OFAC checking in our platform. So when you select vendors to be paid, we scan them against the OFAC list. And then when we process those payments through AvidPay, regardless of how the payment ultimately results in reference to the payment type, whether it's a check, a virtual card, or an ACH, at this point, as someone in the AP department, I no longer have to worry about whether the payment is delivered. I don't have to load checks in a printer, tear perfs, stuff envelopes, get postage on it. Everything is taken care of from that point. And one of the other, I think, added benefits and nice things is that you can see the payment life cycle within the platform. So if it results in a virtual payment, you'll see that. If it's a check, you'll know it's a paper check. When the check clears, so when your vendor has received it, they've deposited that check, we will offer a front and a back image of the payment here in the platform as a nice added research benefit. So that's the simplicity of how we handle payment processing in AvidPay. And I wanted to just give you a window into that to, to maybe make it a little bit more tangible or real in reference to how those payments are processed in our platform. And with that, this is where I think Jeff's insights are going to become so valuable. So Jeff, I'm gonna put you on the spot here and kind of go rapid fire at you with a few questions.
Sure.
And the first one is, can you tell us a little bit about what your process, maybe from invoice to payer, if you wanted to speak directly to payments, prior to implementing our solution and specifically AvidPay, what was your primary method of handling payments prior to adopting this?
Well, not to make a pun on the bank name that we have, 21st Century Bank, but it was going back in time a little bit. And everything was very manual, very check-based, no ACHs, obviously not an AvidPay solution to it. And when I came into the bank, I quickly realized, we needed to do something with that. The accounting person that I had at the time was in a different office, which created a different challenge for us. So getting automation was key. And when I met with we're a Jack Henry core, and our Jack Henry representative that referred us to BankTel and then eventually AvidPay, I thought this is something I really need to look at. And we went through the demos, and I was very impressed. I've had other paperless solutions in the past, but as the CFO of the bank, I didn't often go into it because honestly, I just didn't think I thought it was cumbersome to navigate. And I had a controller that I could rely on to that. With this, It's one of the most simple things to research, to look at where you're at, like you described, Nathan, on status of a payment or the history of payments, and the migration process itself, with Jack Henry was just completely seamless. I mean, all of our payments going back numbers of years that were stored. You can't see the images before what we did going to BankTel and AvidPay, but we can see the history. It's been a very good thing for our organization. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Jeff. And you alluded to this some, but some of the challenges. What type of challenges were you facing specifically in reference to your AP process and payments? Are there any specifics? Maybe things that you were looking to overcome or accomplish, in reference to automation?
Well, it's kind of funny you asked that. I'm a CPA. In 1998, I was studying for the CPA exam, and I didn't have time to reconcile my checkbook. And that's when I entered the bill payment realm, as a person. And from that day, forward, I've looked to that automation in banking, and I've been in banking now, 27 years or so now. But when we went to AvidPay, I was still nervous about the AvidPay product and what that meant, and how probably the biggest thing that would be the issue was what was the perception of our vendors. And when we started the implementation, we wanted to look at AvidPay and also ACH, and we made a number of phone calls to try and automate some from some of our more major vendors to the ACH product. But while I was making those phone calls, I asked every one of them about AvidPay and if they've ever heard of it. And to my surprise, the vast majority of the ones did, and they were already accepting payments from other institutions or other companies in the AvidPay realm, which was comforting to me and made me more comfortable with that. And in the implementation, I had asked, all right, well, what percentage of the people that we're paying, because they had our list from Jack Henry, and it was a significant percentage. And what we did was we defaulted to AvidPay outside of certain types of bills, like donations, which are a little bit more personal for a community bank. But I mean, if they were a national brand, we defaulted them to that. We knew if the process for which they will go through on your behalf to notify your vendors of their options with AvidPay was easy. To me, it was less cumbersome than I thought it would be when I first thought about it. When we had our first conversation about how many, do you expect to use a month? I'm like, I have no idea. Is it 10? Is it 100? But what I can say today is I would bet 75% of our payments are either done by ACH or AvidPay today. We have a weekly cycle where our accounts payable enters their invoices on Fridays and Mondays, an approval process, because we've got the workflow that everybody in the organization knows is Tuesday and Wednesday, and Thursdays we make our payments. And today I signed 3 checks out of 44 payments. I mean, some of them we have the auto signature for under $1,000 payment, but I had to sign 3 checks today. Many weeks I don't have to sign any. And it's really streamlined the process, and been a very good benefit for us, and makes us more timely, I think, too.
Yeah, I think it's a great last point there. Some of you on the call today, due to maybe a slowness of the mail or a combination of just maybe some outdated or inefficient processes that you have internally, may be being hit with late fees or kind of having to negotiate with vendors on payments that arrive late. And I think one of the things that Jeff just alluded to that we've seen a lot of benefit in, not only through just with AvidPay, but just by going with a little bit more of a paperless process and maybe cutting the mail, delays from the mail or just mail time out of the invoice to pay processes, that we can really work to eliminate late payments. And just some other really incredible nuggets of information that Jeff just alluded to that I'll show you in a minute. Go ahead, Jeff. I want to let you
Well, I
expand
don't
on
want
that.
to cut you off, but one of the
Oh,
easiest
great.
decisions for me was, when you look at the per item cost of putting an item through AvidPay, is take your postage off. And now that's
Right.
the difference. And all right, well, when we went into COVID, management had to stay in the office and every employee went home. Well, I was the one putting the stamp on and putting everything in the mail because I was the only one in there, even though our payable department and our accounting department was. And I sat looking at this process going, for 30, 40 cents or whatever the difference is, this is a no-brainer. Just to
That's right.
not have to go through that. I didn't have to drive to the post office or do anything, and you don't have to reconcile it. You don't have to, all that's done on your behalf. The clearing process is extremely efficient, as Nathan pointed out, and you always know where everything is. I would say in the past, year that we've been on the network, we had one payment that reached a limit on a virtual card. Other than that, we've not had any issues from a payment standpoint.
Oh, that's incredible. So yeah, and again, I think it's just our sort of new normal, or even as we all, or a lot of people, return to the office at least to some extent. One of the things that we really think about, and a lot of the financial institutions that we work with are thinking about, is number one, the efficiency that we're talking about. But this is a tool too that you can include in your preparedness for disaster recovery. Anytime that you're displaced from the office, the paper check, as we found in work from home, became a bit of a problem for quite a few of our clients. And so AvidPay is a great tool to kind of have in your back pocket as well, from a DR perspective, a business continuity perspective. And I know already that a lot of disaster recovery type of audits, especially in relation to AP, that they're starting to address specifically the paper check process and what is your contingency for that. So I think great, kind of a great call out there from Jeff in reference to COVID. Yeah.
If I could address that specifically, Nathan, we had signed our contract prior to COVID, and immediately I hired a new controller on the 16th of March last year and had to send her home with a laptop on the 17th.
Wow.
And being in a manual process and knowing that BankTel is coming to make that efficiency better, it motivated me more to get that done. And I probably spent more time on this implementation myself, just for that efficiency that Nathan's talking about, is because I had our employees working remote, and as senior management of the bank, you got to do what you got to do. But I couldn't wait to get BankTel up and running, because it was such a cumbersome process to go from paper invoices to scanning invoices, putting them on a network, making the bill payment prior to BankTel. And then the difference it was, once we were able to get on in late May and early June, to see that benefit was just night and day. Even going from a scan, it was still a manual scanning process. It was more accommodating to our circumstances with COVID, but until we got the full benefits of the platform, it still wasn't efficient.
That's I mean, I couldn't have explained it any better. That's outstanding. So one of the things that Jeff just alluded to, and I want to kind of transition into this, because I'm a salesperson here, and certainly work with a lot of existing clients and prospects, and trying to explain what AvidPay is. And one of the things that I've learned, and I think we already knew, but as we begin to talk about AvidPay to our clients, is that financial institutions really have a unique relationship with their vendors. And we find that more and more in that, in many cases, for those of you that are on the phone, and you probably identify with this a little bit, Jeff, is that in some cases these suppliers, these vendors, are your customers, or they may even be potential customers for you. So even if not, we still want to have great relationships with our vendors. We want to pay them in a timely manner. We want their best service. So this is something that I think a lot of that's so important, and Jeff alluded to this and talking about how we analyze the existing set of vendors going into the project. And we're able to return some statistics to them to show them how many vendors that we already had a payment relationship with. So you can see we have over 680,000 vendors who are enrolled in what we call the AvidPay network. So the benefit of that network is that within that, we store the vendor's payment information. If they want to be paid via paper check, we pay them by check. If they prefer virtual card or the AvidPay Direct option, we have all of that information in the AvidPay network. And that, again, just frees you up to not have to be concerned with how they're being paid, because we're going to address their preferred payment method at the time that you click process in the platform. We're going to match those vendors with those in our network, determine the appropriate payment, and deliver it to them in a timely manner. And if they're not in the network, we're going to deliver them a paper check that gives them all of the remittance information, everything that they need in order to post their AR and receive the payment. But the biggest thing, and I think it's one of those things that we kind of, if you'll pardon the reference, sort of let's pull the kind of the boogeyman out of the closet here, because a lot of people are a little bit concerned of, are you going to be communicating with my vendors, or is that going to be a problem? And the interesting thing that we typically find is that we already are. So many of the vendors or of our clients' vendors are already in our network. They're already accustomed to this process, and it's a natural thing for them. And we have a great onboarding process to communicate with any vendors that are not on the network about what their options are, and being very clear to them that paper check is always an option if it's kind of a mom and pop, or if it's somebody that just prefers a check. So the options are very flexible. We're going to deal
And
with
Nathan,
your vendor.
just
Go ahead, Jeff.
Not to interrupt, but I think it's important to point out is that me as the client or anybody on the call today, you have input into that.
Right.
You get to pick which ones you want to send those pieces to, and they'll be very open and disclose what they look like and how, putting your logo on it or whatever else. But I mean, it's very transparent, which I think was very good. Is it just, you don't just all of a sudden, a lot of vendors are just going to get a random email from AvidPay. You're involved in that communication and know when it's going out, and you can communicate to the potential relationships inside the bank so they know it's coming. For an example, we had, a couple of relationships that our marketing person worked with. They got the letter. Our marketing person knew it was coming, and they were able to easily explain, okay, this is what this means. And I think that's important to point out, is this is not some automated process from a big company that you're not going to have access or input into.
That's a great point, Jeff, and it just speaks to the idea that we understand the sensitivity of some of those vendor relationships, and you do have complete control over that payment type in our system if you want to pay them through AvidPay. And then in the onboarding process, who do you include in the information that we send out? So there may be a handful that you deem highly sensitive for whatever reason, and if you choose not to involve them in this process, that's no problem. I mean, you have alternate ways to pay vendors through our solution aside from AvidPay. So great, it's a great point, Jeff, and I think it just really speaks to the flexibility of it, and the understanding of how you all as financial institutions think about your vendors, how you want them to be treated, and in some cases how there's always maybe going to be something unique about some of those relationships. The other thing here before we move on this slide is just when we talk about this 28%, talking about day one supplier coverage, that's in reference to what we call e-payments, and again, going back to the thought or the message of the virtual credit cards and the rebate incentives that you'll get from that. So Jeff's organization processes somewhere in the neighborhood of about 150 payments a month through AvidPay. And so he can tell you, and I'll be honest and tell you the same, the rebates that they receive, it's not this large number. It's not, it's never going to be a retirement plan for anybody, but it is just another piece that adds value to what you get from the solution and provides an additional return on investment. So those come monthly and they come in the form of credits, and you can use them in whatever way that you would like. So just an added benefit to the solution there. So Jeff, anything else you want to say about the vendors being in the network, et cetera? Is there anything maybe you kind of from an advice standpoint or best practices that you've seen in dealing with
I think
this portion of it?
I had mentioned it earlier in the conversation, but when we were reaching out to a number of our vendors, they were already knowledgeable about the product. They've seen the payments come through from other vendors. But going back to the rebates that you're talking about, I would say that we're paying less net of the rebates that you're talking about than what we would on the postage for the payments we do make through the app. We would have made through the that are going through the AvidPay network than what we would have done with a check and a stamp and an envelope. And I was hesitant, as I said earlier, but it's been a year now, and like I said, I've only run into one issue where there was a limit, and it was a large limit. It's not a small one that we ran into. So I don't think there's much to worry about from that standpoint. So I don't want to overburden that comment, but it's just been very seamless, very easy, and we've had no issues. A lot less worry than I initially had, I would say.
And that's outstanding. I can't stress enough that those are the kinds of things that, as we work in an implementation and onboarding process, anything that there's a concern with, or kind of pulling those things, really addressing those on the front end. That's one of the primary goals of the implementation, is to create comfort with not only you as our client, but also your vendors that you're going to be paying. So last thing, and we'll be really quick here, just in terms to how the payments move through the network and the life cycle. It's really just a one-day process. When you perform the function that you saw in the platform of processing and payment through AvidPay, we move the funds on your behalf. Everything is automated. There are no manual entries to make. And as we move funds, they go through one transaction at a time, and that's important because it makes every transaction traceable. So it's not a lump sum movement of funds. It's one payment at a time going into an account at the bank from the solution, and then one debit at a time from that account into the account, the AvidPay account that we manage, from where the payments will be drawn. AvidXchange has a national money transmitter license, so we have all the proper licenses in place and everything that's needed to move money across states and create these payments. And your vendor will receive remittance information for virtual cards, and that's going to help them to, of course, be able to post their receivables properly. And then the next day, if it's a check payment, those checks are cut and mailed out to the suppliers. And then we have a follow-up process for both virtual credit cards and check payments. We have a team of 400 people that are all US based in Charlotte, North Carolina, that we refer to as our supplier services teams. They provide follow-up. They'll reach out to your vendor on your behalf. If a payment ages, we also escheat payments that when it's necessary in every state. So we're really not only creating the payment, delivering it, but offering a total solution in terms of follow-up and everything that takes place with that payment from that point. So just a brief bit there on the payment life cycle. And so now, as we mentioned at the outset, we've got some a place to input questions. If you guys have any questions for me or for Jeff, and give you a couple of minutes there to throw in some questions, and then I think we have a drawing for a nice prize to wrap this up. And once again, want to stress how much we appreciate Jeff's time today. His insights have just been so valuable, and I think for some of our attendees, it's probably for those of you who work in the accounting department or accounting professionals at your institution, you can certainly identify with, Jeff's experience through COVID and just, um, what it takes to get AP done properly and in a timely manner in a financial institution. So with that, we'll let those questions come in, try to get those answered, and then move to our drawing.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan and Jeff, for providing those awesome insights into AvidPay. Just kind of reiterate, we want to offer this time to our viewers to ask some questions. So if you haven't done so already, there's a panel on your screen where you can enter in your questions to either Nathan or Jeff. Nathan, we have our first question that popped up. The question is, we have a lot of local vendors who want payment today. How long does it take those vendors to get set up and paid with AvidPay?
So not long at all to get them set up, and again, you can deliver those payments touchless. We'll deliver a paper check to them. If they prefer an alternate payment method, they'll have the opportunity to notate that. So now, if it's, let's say it is someone that, we see this a lot in community banks, especially if someone needs payment right this minute, through the Ascend solution, you can still print your own paper check for some of those one-off scenarios. And so we can, you can choose to do that immediately, no problem. And easy to do. We're going to format that check to your specifications. So, and as Jeff said, that, occasionally, I think, was it 3 or 4 a week, maybe, that's going to be necessary in some circumstances, and it's available to you. We make that very easy.
Okay, Nathan, we have our next question from April. The question is, how easy is it to cancel a payment that was initiated?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to do that. Depends on how far through the life cycle it is. So if you realize that quickly, we can put a cancellation in, free of charge really quick. All you have to do is reach out to our support team and they'll take care of that. If it's more of a stop payment, there is a fee structure through AvidPay for stop payments, but we can handle those for you as well. And all you have to do is reach out to our team and just kind of explain the scenario. And then from there, we'll look into where the payment is in its, maturation and life cycle and determine what the appropriate steps are. Good question, though.
Okay, one more okay, we have a couple more questions, Nathan. The next question is, to research outstanding checks, is there a database we can search, or is it just a request we can send to the AvidPay team for the information?
So there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, through the Ascend platform, you can actually drill down into the payment and get the latest information on where it is in its life cycle. Now, for a check, once it's mailed, between that time and, the time that it's deposited, there's not really, there's kind of a void in communication there. No one really knows what's happening until then. But you have the individual payment research. And what we can also offer is, periodically, if you would like a report delivered of your outstanding items, we can set that up to be delivered to you automatically. So a couple of different ways to address that, both a payment at a time and then, as a collectively, just the entire list of your outstanding items, if you'd like to receive those periodically.
If I could add to that, Nathan, I think the research abilities are really nice. From my standpoint, if you know the vendor, if you know the general ledger that it was posted to, there's lots of different research abilities within the Ascend product where, in the past lives, I've had to have Fiserv or Jack Henry open on one window and my accounts payable solution in on another. I rarely have to do that now. If I want to look up, what was the last rent payment or something for our, one of our vendors, I can pull up a rent history. I can pull up the vendor history. I can pull, there's a lot of different ways to research, which I think are nice embedded in the program, without even having to run a report like Nathan's talking about. I think just knowing the nature of the payment, it all ties back to the vendor. It all ties back to the payment. Like Nathan has said, you can see the clearing status of it, but you can get to that payment that you're looking for in a multitude of ways, which I think is very convenient.
That's great. I appreciate the additional context there, Jeff. So yeah, we try to cover all bases there, in reference to that, realizing that obviously it's not something that you delivered on your own, and it does need to have some traceability. So hope that's helpful in that question.
Nathan, we have another question from Jennifer. The question is there a charge to send a paper check versus sending an ACH?
So there is, I'll start with the ACH, and I want to try to clarify this as best I can. So in the Ascend platform, we offer an ACH payment that is not through AvidPay. That's a great way to pay your vendors who want to be paid in that way. It does deliver them remittance information via email. And so for a lot of the customers that we onboard, maybe they have an existing accounting solution in which they have a group of vendors who are already set up to be paid by ACH. We can bring those over and continue that process. AvidPay Direct, as well as paper check, as well as virtual card, those are the three types of payments through AvidPay. For our financial institution clients, statistically, AvidPay Direct represents probably just over 1% of all payments that we send through the network. So 99% of the payments that we send out are resulting in either a paper check or a virtual credit card. The fees for all payments to the institution, to you, the bank, the buyer, if you will, are 89 cents per payment. So as Jeff alluded to, when you think about the idea of a postage stamp now being north of 50 cents, and the fact that you don't have to handle the paper and go through the traditional handling of a paper check, there's a great deal of cost savings factored into that. Now, if it goes out as a virtual card to the vendor, that's treated just like any other card transaction. So think about when you walk into a storefront with your card, you swipe it, they're going to incur network interchange fees to accept that payment. It's no different for a virtual credit card, and the fee structure is essentially the same as what they would experience there. For AvidPay Direct through AvidPay, there is a small fee, but again, we see very little of that in the payments that we send. And I think that's mostly because the vendors that want to accept ACH, our customers are paying them through Ascend ACH. But the one thing that I always try to caution people on, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but when you think about ACH, it's a great way to pay. And certainly a lot of our customers and prospects that we talk to have talked about, we really want to pay vendors through ACH, and it makes sense. But the one thing that I always caution people on is there is, in that effort over time, as you're trying to get them to accept an ACH payment, and it's your staff that's sending out communication, and you're having to go update vendor information in the AP solution, there is over time a little bit of a law of diminishing returns on that. So you're only going to get so much adoption. And there is a lot of effort from your team on that. And I think a lot of people have sort of, said, okay, those that are taking ACH or that request it, sure, we'll send you an ACH payment through Ascend. But everybody else, we want to try to send through AvidPay so that we don't have to handle the information. So, and I think that too just kind of lays out for you the ultimate flexibility of how you pay your vendors that our platform offers. So great question.
I would definitely, echo those comments. When we were paying everything with a check, and when we went to AvidPay, we spent some time trying to get ACH items set up, but we're not doing a lot of that anymore. I mean, our default is now AvidPay. I mean, you're going to have some success, as Nathan talked about, but there is definitely a point of diminishing returns where, and of the vast majority of them that are left, that AvidPay provides a different solution for, whether it's through, the virtual card, their ACH option, the check option. Either way, I would completely agree. As there is a point where you are going to, the time isn't going to be worth it. When you're implementing the technology, Nathan.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And Jennifer, I hope that was was helpful in reference to your question. But and I want to say too about any of these questions, we're happy to go more in depth with any of you about if you obviously want to learn more, we want to answer your questions in more depth, and hopefully have an opportunity to learn more about you if this is something that that resonates and you want to explore further. So these are great questions. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, really good questions, Nathan and Jeff. That will actually conclude our Q&A session. There isn't any more questions in the queue. Really, thank you for participating this week, and hope that you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks
Thank
again,
you,
Jeff.
everybody. Take care.